Welcome to today's webinar, Ramping the Recovery. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We're going to be discussing how we can accelerate the COVID-19 economic recovery with emphasis on situational awareness, threat monitoring, and information sharing. Our presenter today is Pete Odell. He's been the CEO of Swan Island Networks since 2015. Before co-founding Swan Island, Pete was the Chief Operating Officer for a number of high-growth startups, and he was the president of Autodesk Retail Products. He is the author of Silver Bullets, which is a book about interoperable data, and Cyber 24/7, Risks, Leadership, Sharing. His new book, Global Shared Resilience, is slated for publication in Q3 of this year. Pete spent 4 years in the United States Army, and he has an MBA in business. He's an avid fly fisherman, and he volunteers with www.fishingcommunity.org, a nonprofit focused on veterans and their families. Pete, will you tell us a little bit about Swan Island?
Absolutely, Sherry. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks everyone for coming. I just want to give you a quick overview to Swan Island Networks, and we'll jump into our webinar. On the lower right, you'll see an example of Swan Island Networks. We've been supporting the COVID-19 effort with a series of easy-to-use dashboards that you're welcome to use and share. All the information you need to access them is there. So we are a Portland, Oregon-based company, although all of our staff is working remotely. And we've been around for 15 plus years doing innovative software solutions in the security world. We have a large-scale project in New York City called the Metropolitan Resilience Network, which is an information sharing capability for 400 organizations that are credentialed to receive automated situational awareness. And we're an allied universal technology partner. They resell and augment the capabilities of our solution through retail. And as a technology, we're a Microsoft Azure cloud technology provider and written in the Microsoft technology stack. So today, I'm going to talk about the recovery. And as background, I wanted to touch on resilience, because this is an important word for the state where we are. And you'll see, one lighthearted definition from the Timex watch commercials in the 1960s, but Judith Rogan's definition is a very good one. And the book is excellent, The Resilience Dividend. It talks through that you are going to take hits as an organization, but it's going to be important to recover from those shocks and to grow and learn and emerge on the other side of that disaster canyon as a stronger, better organization. So important to keep in mind. And I think most companies that are listening to this are going through the resilience phase right now, where you're learning things you never knew you could do, but because you have to do them. So I wanted to touch on the importance of this recovery, especially from a global standpoint, but going all the way down to, the corner restaurant and the corner, convenience store, anybody that's closed today and is in a non-essential role. And what's amazing is we've never stopped the planet before. We've never had a period of time where across the entire world, all commerce that's non-essential has just ceased. And that's something that should give everybody pause, because once you stop something that's complex, restarting it is going to be difficult, and I think it's going to be very fraught with problems as we go, and those problems are going to be exacerbated if we don't plan now. We're all sitting home. If you're listening to this currently, we're sheltering in place, waiting for the curve to flatten, so we can get back and figure out our new normal. And it's going to be important to take this time and plan for how are we going to move towards a reopening, no matter what your business is, whether it's big or small, whether it's located in one town or whether it's a multinational conglomerate, you're going to run into many of the issues. And the importance of doing this quickly and smoothly, as opposed to running into a lot of problems, is illustrated in this point about the size of the global economy. These numbers, which I ran, I'm not an economist, but if you take, what world economic activity is, which is 7.5 trillion, and you assign some value of the economy, and I used a very conservative number of 30%, that is on hold, getting that 30% on track equates to $75 billion a day around the world. So it's important to kind of move that along a couple of weeks, and it adds up to real money. Some of the potential problem areas that I think we're going to see, they're going to cause a lot of issues, is testing for the virus, especially in the employment mode. Do you test your employees? What about your contractors, your visitors, your vendors? All the people that might be in your facility are going to have some way of understanding, are they healthy? Are they bringing the virus to your employees who are trying to move towards a back to work environment? I think you're going to see government issuing, all well-intentioned, but on a tremendously varied basis, new regulations, new guidance, best practices. I think something's going to be issued, and in turn, judges are going to rule and say, oh, that's unconstitutional, and suddenly you're going to be back at square one. So the importance of that as a problem area to monitor is going to be key. We've already seen, some supply chains disrupted. Toilet paper disappeared off the shelves because of a somewhat, fictitious feeling that everybody needed to go get some. But when you look at the COVID impact on some of the pork processing plants in the U.S., we're starting to see a projection that meat in the supermarket may go up in price because it's going to be much less available because the factories are out of commission. And one of the things when you think about a recovery is, are we going to have recurrence? When is that virus going to come back? In the summer, in the fall, is it going to come back in certain corporate campuses? Where is it going to show up? And when you add to all that good news, the other threats that still exist, hurricane season, flooding, earthquakes, tornadoes, wildfires in the American West, all those things have the ability to compound the recovery as we go forward. So let's look at some of the issues. So some of the best timing estimates out there is this is going to take 12 to 18 months. Those are projections. No way to tell if they're in the right mode, the wrong mode, and we don't know what the unemployment figures worldwide are going to look like. But those unemployment figures, the people being unemployed, potentially more than were in the global recession back that paralleled our Great Depression, could be very striking in terms of civil unrest and a whole set of other problems. Their recovery models, in the sense of a W, which says we recover very quickly, but as soon as we start to get ramped up in recovery and everybody's suddenly back sitting in Dodger Stadium, that there's a huge recurrence of the virus. It takes us right back to where we are today, and then we have to struggle up again. So I think of most of the models, that's the ones that seem the most painful. V recovery is the one everybody hopes for. That the economy is going to go down, as it's laying down at the bottom of the V right now, but we're going to have a very sharp recovery as we start moving people back to work. The U-shaped recovery is, we're down. It's going to take a while. It's going to slowly get around, and it's going to come back up. The L is the worst case, and it's been used in the context of like Carnival cruises, where an industry is down and it may not come back. It's going to have a very difficult time, both from a financial standpoint, from a customer perception standpoint, regaining any kind of growth curve. And I mentioned other concurrent threats. And then, there are also tectonic shifts in the sense of things we've discovered during this pandemic is people work at home very effectively. So what happens to the real estate market if 40% of the people that are currently at home working suddenly stay there? And their companies say, oh, we're going to downsize the real estate, and that happens around the world. The public perception of the recovery is going to be very important as well. How fast are you going to want to go to a major league soccer stadium or major league baseball stadium? What's going to happen as people do that? Is the virus going to emerge? Are we going to find a way to do that? And then who's going to emerge stronger? There are companies that are definitely coming out of this pandemic and out of the recovery with an enhanced sense of momentum and capabilities, especially the technologies for working at home or entertaining at home. So those are critical. And you're going to have to look at this in the context of your organization's most important variables. Is it your people? Is it your supply chain? The customers that come to your facility? If you're in a theme park, your employees are one part, but they're outnumbered by thousands and thousands of customers. So a lot of different variables that you're going to have to assess for your own organization. And that requires a detailed plan. And the time to do that detailed plan is now, while you have some time, while we're still sheltering in place, while this coronavirus is still, basically keeping the world locked down. Now's the time to do the planning. Now's the time to figure out how you're going to drive things forward. And part of that is coordination and alignment with the guidelines and the rules issued by the jurisdictions that your facilities are involved in. So again, if you're a multinational or a restaurant employer with restaurants across all 50 states in the United States, how do you figure out which rules you've got to apply, and are they different every time you go to a different county or a different state? Most of the people I've talked to so far about the recovery are advocating a phased return to work. So 10 to 15 to 20% of the most essential employees coming back to the facilities, going back to work, but with limited entry points, with potentially additional security resources, health screening areas in the lobby, and maybe a pledge signed by employees that says, if I feel bad or if I learn from some other way that I've been exposed to the virus, I'll disclose that so my company can turn around and take the most appropriate actions to keep everybody as safe as possible. And then even in rearranging the business and driving social distancing, new contact rules, if you have no conference rooms, for example, or everybody can't go to the cafeteria to get coffee at the same moment. And when you do go places, you have to go down corridors on a one-way basis. And because the elevators are such a choke point in high rises, that you may have to stagger your arrivals because you may spend an hour waiting for an elevator. Guess what? There's 2,000 people doing the same thing. So suddenly all the social distancing you might have done later in the day just got preempted with a bunch of strangers in the lobby of your large-scale building. So the key is important. And then another key is an action plan for recurrence and exposure to the virus. Who's in charge? Who's taking that reporting? Who's making the decisions? What are the special cases that you have to worry about, and how are you going to measure success or failure? How do you know whether to expand your return to work or to retreat and send people back home? What are going to be the decision points in that? So some of the recovery mitigation strategies that you can incorporate into the recovery are to organize. And there's a great McKinsey article about decision-making in uncertain times that talks about having a corporate nerve center. So you can call that a corporate nerve center, a crisis center, a strategic operations center, a security operations center, whatever you call it. It's a capability that is a group of people that can address issues across the organization, make rapid decisions, report to the C-suite, to the board of directors, and help move the company as smoothly and as swiftly through this recovery process as can possibly be done. Understanding there will be a lot of fits and starts along the way, and the opportunity to both fail and become a hero by some great action. Many companies are considering a chief recovery officer during this crisis, somebody that's a senior member of the executive staff who can drive this across the entire, both employee base, the C-suite, the board, and become the focal point for the entire organization. Another key is situational awareness, which my company specializes in, getting the information that you need and staying up to date, because of any time in the last 20 or 30 years, the information will be changing extremely rapidly. So something that on Tuesday you thought you should focus on, if on Thursday the entire focus changes and is preempted by a different practice, suddenly if you miss that memo, you're back in with the wasting time mode. And another area where that is also emphasized is information sharing. So sharing information with people inside your company, across your industry, with people, in your regional area, because there's going to be some unique issues around the New York City metro area, of LA, other places around the world, where it's important to have regional partners that are also sharing information, and your customers and your suppliers all in the loop, where everybody's helping keep watch, right? Both outside your organization and inside, having a rapid way to get feedback, to make new plans, to have a contingency capability, to start over, get on a new track, but do that in a way where you're aligning your interests with other people so you're not trying to go at it on your own. This is going to be a very large job. So sharing is key. And we learned a lot about sharing and the lack of information sharing around 9/11. If you remember the connect the dots with a subsequent dare to share pledge by our different intelligence communities. It was also illustrated after Superstorm Sandy in the sense of they found out after the fact that there was no way to share information across a large number of corporations that with the different government agencies. So there's some huge economies around information sharing. You get the benefit of knowing what everybody else knows versus trying to find it out yourself. This is not sharing proprietary information that can be compromised. It's information that makes everybody stronger and is not, any kind of competitive advantage. And this information can be shared, across the board, things that affect everybody. It can be information that's shared about a specific industry sector like manufacturing or pharmaceuticals. And then again, on a regional basis, everybody in a certain area sharing the information of what they need to know. And, for example, in the Midwest, there's going to be some large scale flooding, or at least predicted for the spring. How does that work together with the, with any kind of virus reoccurrence and any kind of team trying to stem and add social distancing to make that a plan. So sharing that information around the region is going to be very important. And these are two information sharing examples. One that we're a core part of, the New York City Metropolitan Resilience Network, run by the Intercept Group at New York University, and the InfraGard effort which is an FBI-sponsored effort. It's a public-private partnership with 70,000 vetted members around the country. It does some tremendous information sharing capability around security and counterterrorism. To touch on situation awareness and threat monitoring, this really, in its simplest mode, is forward-looking radar, keeping your eyes open, monitoring what's going on, that could impact your organization, and that by getting ahead of it can give you a better chance to safeguard, lives, property, your business continuity, and your corporate reputation. So finding out sooner rather than later is inevitably a very good idea. And you can integrate that forward-looking radar with other response methods, things like mass notification, things like incident response capability. And all of those together allow you to communicate better across your organization and with the people that you have to work with on a day-in, day-out basis, especially through this recovery. Another good model to think about is a threat cycle model, which talks through, blue sky, where things are good, and what you should be doing is get ready for your next emergency. We're clearly not in that mode right now. We're giving this presentation at the end of April. We're right in the heart of the disaster is here. But the planning time that can be happening on the recovery can, anything you can do to prepare and anticipate what you're going to need is going to be very helpful as we start moving into a recovery segment. So this is a great model to use as you think through, both this emergency and other emergencies. Another thing to understand is the importance of aligning your efforts inside your organization. If everybody out there is out there checking Worldometer every 15 minutes and people are browsing for, my department needs to know what the governor just said about this closure, but there's 4 other departments that are Googling the same information. It may not be apparent, but that random browsing for intelligence and information that you're going to need for the recovery can add up to a gigantic cost to your organization. So using tools and using capabilities to align that information, share it within the organization becomes a critical way of avoiding some very large costs and allowing people to work on more important capabilities. So that's the end of the discussion just around the recovery. The summary is, you want to start recovery planning right now, and that open source intelligence can help you, situational awareness can help you, proactive threat monitoring is going to give you more time to manage that, and information sharing is going to leverage everybody's knowledge around this critically important function. So the priorities that we have as my company are to help stem the pandemic, accelerate the recovery in terms of planning and being able to run, versus stumble to this new reality that we're all going to end up in. And then remembering the lessons that we learn along the way. very easy when you get a period of 5, 10 years between major emergencies, forget the lessons that are so painful and so apparent today, that getting ready sooner and being more coordinated would have saved a lot of time and in some cases saved a lot of lives. So it's important to remember these while we're in the middle of this crisis period. So with that, I'm going to move towards a discussion of our solution, which will help you, in the recovery, and if you're still, having issues with the COVID-19 problems inside your organization, certainly some help we can do there. So we have two products that I'm going to touch on. Mostly going to spend time on TX360, which is a intelligence platform with a number of different tools aimed at corporate security professionals, corporate leaders, that corporate nerve center that we talked about. How do you put people, in a place, allow them to share information, allow them to analyze intelligence, and figure out what's best for the organization going forward. And then for smaller organizations or organizations without any kind of formal crisis center, we have TX Global, which is an alerting intelligence service that is just literally like Spotify for open source intelligence. It'll bring you music and intelligence to your PC at a very low price, which is a combination of both analyst and machine automated alert feeds. The benefits of these type of tools are apparent: risk reduction, rapid response, the time savings that we talked about, and also adding surge and redundancy capabilities. Because our solution is actually driven out of the cloud, we can have partners who can provide backup analysts, backup GSOC space, and other capabilities that allows your organization to add resources when you can't do it under your traditional mode of hiring more employees. I mentioned the recovery capabilities that we have, the ability to stand up a corporate nerve center and help people drive information both in and out of the organization, target and filter the right information, be able to send that information to inside your company, to partners and customers, all on basis of what they need to see and what they need to know. We have the capability to color code assets across the world by, what's their status? Are they red? They're totally closed. Are they yellow? They're in the process of opening or have a couple of gating issues. Or are they green? They're open, potentially with a couple of qualifiers. And we give the ability to rapidly monitor, information about security, the virus recurrence, what's going on with your supply chain, what's happening with travel, all those types of things. And our solution can be both customized from a dashboard standpoint, from a custom intel monitoring standpoint, the sources that you have. We're totally usable from home, from a browser-only standpoint, and we can integrate with partners and external data, and also work in a customer consortium, an information sharing environment, similar to what we do in New York. Some of our dashboards, I'm going to walk through these fairly quickly, but it gives you the ability to see these dashboards are blended solutions of multiple sources of information. So we can take a map, we can take open source cameras, we can take different geospatially oriented tweets, weather information, other information from news sources, and blend it all together into a composite picture, in this case, a London Common Operating picture. This is an example when we talk about status tracking. This is every county in Texas. Texas has the largest number of counties in any state in the United States, at 640 counties. You can see each one of these counties is coded as green, yellow, or red based on a series of factors. And this is a prototype view. This is not, if you live here, don't add anything to your understanding of your county. This is just fake data right now. So, but it gives you an idea that for any kind of area, being able to break it down and visualize what are the key elements for a particular area is important. We can monitor things like facilities. This is the Port of Long Beach, for example, from an open source intelligence. And then I mentioned those other disasters. So this is an example of one of our technology partners and the hurricane support we provided to a large number of their customers in July of 2019. We also work on a large set of wildfire reporting and being able to do power outage reporting at the same time to other customers. And through Google Chrome, we allow information from foreign feeds or mixed language feeds to be brought in and customized or translated into English so that multi-language feeds can actually be brought in and used as part of your intelligence effort. So those are the dashboards. We also deliver information to your cell phone and email that are rich alerts. You can see here, this is an article that was forwarded from the CDC. We added information to it and formatted it, gave it a map where we could actually see where the event happened. If you have your assets built into our system, which is very easy to do, the alerts will then also tell you that this alert happened within a certain number of miles of one of your key corporate assets. So you get that information that augments the other information I mentioned. This is an example of one of our coronavirus monitor dashboards. I'll have the URLs for that at the end of this presentation. It was also at the front. And you can see where we're able to track multiple sources of information about the virus. In this case, this is non-health related, but it's what's happening in the economy from a number of different sources about the markets, about different news sources about what's going to happen with the economy. And then we also are going to be impacted by future technologies. So some of these are going to affect people in the very near time, and then some will take a little longer. But artificial intelligence is affecting every piece of data gathering and predictive analytics and capabilities around the tremendous amount of data you're going to need for the recovery. Another area that is particularly important is intelligent video. Video in the past has been passive video that somebody has to watch, or you queue it into a video management system and you look at it later after something bad happened. With intelligent video, it's a shift to artificially intelligent cameras who can pick something out and say, hey, some guy who last week threatened the marketing department, his license plate just came into the parking lot. You guys might want to make a note of that. Or, oh, that same person just got out of his car and he's got a gun, right? So hopefully that gives you more time to react to that situation than you would have had previously with passive video. The note on satellites and the LEO satellites is another stunning example of where, in a couple of years through SpaceX and Amazon and their LEO constellation of satellites, that the entire globe is going to be able to receive a high-speed internet signal. So if you've been out in the flatlands of certain parts of the U.S. or other parts of the world where getting an internet connection is very difficult, the LEO satellites are going to have an amazing impact really in the next couple of years. And that impact turns around and enables lower cost sensors who can track things like fire starts, flooding, river gauges, all in a place where communicating the results of those sensors was very difficult previously, but becomes now much easier, much lower price, and opens up a broad range of new applications. And the robots and drones are going to continue to come. Get smarter, faster, better every day. So with that, Sherry, I'd like to go back to you for any questions that we accumulated during the webinar, and I'll try my best to answer them.
Okay, Pete, the first question that we got was, how long do you think the economic recovery might take?
I expect that it's going to take 12 to 18 months. I think we're going to have to truly get back to the new normal. I think it's going to require a vaccine that not only has been developed and tested extensively, but then has to be manufactured in, a few billion doses, which is no trivial thing. Yeah. And that's assuming nothing bad happens along the way. If another, virus shows up, if any one of the other 20, big things that could happen around the Earth transpire, then we may be back into, the recovery is going to take longer.
Okay. What might be the biggest impediments to that recovery?
I think the biggest impediment is going to be confusion. The fact that things are going to be changing very quickly. It's going to be very hard for corporations and governments to work together effectively so that the right cycle of, here's the information, let's put it to work, let's learn what can happen, let's share that back, let's get it back to a best practice, and let's get it out to everybody else so that everybody's getting smarter simultaneously. As a species, we have a bad habit of everybody doing things independently and not coordinating those efforts. And in this case, I think it's going to cost us, hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars.
Okay, that's you're actually going in the direction that the next question asks for some details on, which is, tell us a little bit more about information sharing.
Okay, the key to information sharing, I kind of went over. It's how do you get different groups of people looking at information that's been disseminated, feeding information back, and sharing across these various silos of, federal, state, and local governments, corporations, tribal, international, nonprofits, all those different groups. How do you get people working together, especially in an area where the information just can't go up on a website, right? And even on a website, if there's 360 websites, how do you know which one to go to? So some kind of coordinated effort where it's a formal information sharing program with people looking to save their organization by sharing information with others. And it's a very similar kind of network effect as to what helped Facebook become an incredibly large company, which is the more people who share, the more people who are going to read it. The more people who read it, the more they're going to generate more people that are going to share. And the cumulative intellect of that sharing network is going to continue to go up. And suddenly there's invaluable information being distributed to a large number of people.
Okay. Let's talk about the corporate nerve center for just a minute. Who should be on that team?
The corporate nerve center is made up of a team of everybody that impacts the organization. So when you look at a manufacturing company, for example, certainly the standard organizations like HR and finance are going to have to participate in that team, right? Finance is trying to keep enough funds flowing into the organization to facilitate all that the money's got to be spent to drive the recovery. HR has got to be watching out for the employees and maybe picking up brand new roles of suddenly they're doing health testing, right? Something that, I never walked into a company before and had my temperature taken or had to give up a swab to make sure I wasn't contagious. So suddenly there's a whole new set of roles. And then you've got the people, inside the factory who might be sourcing parts, who might be figuring out how to reassemble the production line so that everybody can be 6 feet apart. So representatives of all those people across the company are going to be really important. And just on the Sunday night, recent end of April, 60 Minutes, there was a segment on General Motors and some of the reconfiguration they've done to build ventilators. They still got all their factories shut, but they had some incredible information about how they moved to build ventilators, source the parts, and along the way learned about what it means to set up a more socially distant environment so that people can still get the job done, but not put themselves at risk.
Okay. The next time around, and there will be a next time, of course, what are some ways to make this kind of recovery process easier?
The key is to spend the blue sky time that shows up when we get through this recovery. Everybody's going to want to take a breath and go back to normal, and kind of preparing for the next disaster is going to be like, I don't really want to do that. But it's going to be important for somebody in the organization to be tasked with taking the lessons learned while they're still fresh in everybody's mind and applying them to what could come next, right? And that what could come next has 1,000 different faces. It may be something that happens to your company, in a very small area like a tornado, all the way up to some other kind of global event. But there are common things you can do to prepare and to become more resilient, so that when things happen, it's suddenly you're learning from what we've learned during the pandemic and applying it to new situations that you're going to have to confront.
Okay. On one of the dashboards, it mentioned analysts. Is that something that Swan Island does? Do you have analysts as a service?
Yeah. So we, through our products where we hand out open source intelligence, we have a whole curation process. So we have a team of very smart analysts who go through information and augment it with things like category, geospatial capability, nearness to certain assets of our customers, those types of things. And those analysts are also available as a service if our customer needs to augment their capabilities and add additional intellectual horsepower because of a particular crisis.
Okay. We're down to the very last question. How can I get a demo of TX360?
So our website is on the presentation. If you don't have it right there, it's SwanIslandNetworks.com, and on there you can evaluate the information about our products, and we'd be happy to schedule a demo to show you how the various elements that we could bring to your recovery portfolio of tools is going to be very useful to you. So with that, I appreciate everybody attending, and thanks very much.
Hey, Pete, before you go one more slide, because I think that if somebody's interested in that COVID-19 demo, here's the information for that. Yep,
you're absolutely right. So here's our COVID dashboard suite and our website address that you're welcome to come to, and through there you can arrange a demo. So thanks everybody for attending and listening to the bitter end.
Thank you, Pete.